So do you guys know that basically most of your users, 53% of your users, will leave your website if it takes more than 3 seconds to download? Last year, I didn't know this number, but I literally faced it in front of my face. So basically, I released my new blog post, and basically, I was getting some readers. Like in one day, it was around 1,000 people, and then some other blog posts got like 2,000 or 3,000 people, thanks to Reddit. So basically, most of the complaints of the people were kind of like, "Hey, your website is really slow." And for me, I didn't know what to do. So those are numbers from last year, basically, on how much fast were my website loading. So I was kind of like, what can I do? So basically, I started to research and understanding, all right, so what is the best way to do X or Y, or how can I optimize things? And this is what I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to share my findings and all the process that I learned to improve my website. So I'm Jorge Ferreiro. Right now, I'm a software engineer at Eventbrite. So most of you will know because you booked the tickets there. So I'm basically right now specializing more in front-end. Before that, I was doing an internship at Amazon as a backend engineer. And basically, my role has been full stack. I'm hosting a new YouTube show that is going to come up like next month. And basically, I'm write blog posts, and I'm a really Hamilton fan, the musical. Doesn't work? Yeah. So I'm from Madrid. I was born and raised there, and I'm here with you for you guys. So I don't live in London. I live in Madrid, so I come just for the presentation. So I'm really excited about it. So at Eventbrite, all our stack is React. So for me, it was really cool because before joining Eventbrite, I didn't know anything about React. So it was a really interesting process to learn new stuff on the go. As I mentioned before, I'm hosting this new TV show, which is, YouTube show, which is Developers in Dev and the 360. So what are you going to learn today? So first of all, my expectations when I started to research about web performance, then some tools that you can use to start, like measuring your website. Then how does the browser work? 7 lessons learned and a gift. So I'm going to give you guys one gift at the end. So what is that gift? So is this t-shirt? Big applause for that or not, guys? Okay. Yeah. So it's oh, hold on. Perfect. So it's really cool. I'm really proud of the t-shirt. It costs money, so it's not like it's something that I'm putting effort on that. So let's get started. So my expectations versus the reality. So basically, I was at home and I was thinking, yeah, so I'm going to go to Google. I'm going to just search 7 tips to improve my website, and boom, everything is going to be great. That's a myth. So what I discovered is that there's no a single way of doing things, and most of the time, there's no like, do X and you're gonna get Y for your use case. So I started to research different companies, basically going to their websites, understand how do they handle these web performance things, and I learned interesting things. So Twitter. There is a video. So this is the first thing you see at Twitter. So it's loading this part, and then it loads the who to follow and the trends for you. So basically, and then this is the notifications part. So if you go to the notifications, it's the same story. The first thing that user sees is your notifications area. The other part is like complementary. So what I learned from that is basically, it's not about making all your website fast. It's all about making the part of your website that creates value for the business. So in the case of the Twitter, what I want from the users is, boom, see my timeline, boom, follow people, retweets. I don't want them to waste time for trends for you. It's not that important, the who to follow. Then so that's what I call the critical path, and many people call it, which is what is the most important part of your application that you should display first to the user. Then I went to YouTube And I searched for my favorite YouTube show, Peppa Pig. How many of you do you know Peppa Pig? Yeah. So this is what happens. This is the first loading of the website. Again, the first thing that we see is the video. People go to YouTube for watching video. And then, oh, this is crazy. And then basically, they show these ads, they show the what's next, but that's what creates value, and that's why people go to YouTube. So that was really interesting for me. So at the end of the day, my takeaway was kind of like, hey, it's all about measuring. Web performance is about measuring, comparing, and also understanding your business needs. It's not about like just making something fast just because of that. And a good example of this is Twitter, Facebook. So imagine that you say, well, people will go to the frequently asked questions in my website, and it takes 5 seconds. Okay, it sucks, but doesn't matter. You will not bring money just because of that. You will bring money showing the home, doing any other stuff. So for me, that I'm a big fan of electronic music, so it's all about think first, measure, compare, repeat. Think, measure, compare, repeat. Think, measure, compare, repeat. Fatboy Slim. I think he's from Britain? I don't know. Well, anyway. So now let's move forward and let's see. All right. So now we understand web performance is important. I should care about web performance. Many companies are doing that. So what are the tools that we can use to understand what's going on our house? All right, so this is kind of the popular ones. So page insights, it's as easy as you go, you type your website, and boom, it runs like a test on mobile and desktop, and you see the results. And also it's really interesting because it shows like different suggestions, like, all right, you're doing really bad on optimizing your pictures, what you can do, and they link to their online documentation. So it's a really good learning opportunity. I learned a lot from that. Then the second one is similar, but in your browser. So if you use, for example, Chrome Canary, and I guess like in the normal Chrome, if you go to the feature flags, you may find that, is the audits. So it's same idea. You just run it, and locally, it runs like different tests. And there is the last one, but I mean, it's crazy. There are many, many of them. But this one is from Node. So it's a Node module. So you just require its performance, and basically it has like different methods in their API. So in this case, for example, it's as simple as saying, I want to create a mark. So this is the starting of my performance measurement. Then here you run like different operations, and here you say end. And now you call the measure, and it will show, all right, so how long did it take, etc. And here there are some like commands if you download the presentation and you want to play around with that. This is also available in Chrome, in the browser, so you don't only need Node to run it. All right, so how many of you knows exactly what happens when you hit google.com until you see everything in your screen? How many of you know that? Honestly, it's just like because you don't want to raise your hands, or it's because you don't know? Okay. No, I didn't know as well, so that's cool. So for me, to be honest, it was kind of like a black box. It was kind of like magic. Like, I didn't care, honestly. It's like, all right, I go to twitter.com and I see beautiful things in my screen, but I didn't know what was behind the scenes, right? So then I started to research. So the first thing was, all right, let's get the HTML from the server. The second part is and by the way, this is what the browser does. So the second part was basically an HTML transformation. So at the end of the day, the goal of the browser is you pass me these kind of bytes that I don't understand, that I don't know. You tell me that the encoding is HTML, so I want to create a high-level representation of that code. So this is what it's doing here. So you have this tree, which is like the DOM, document object model. So you see like the different parts of the HTML converted into a tree. The second part is all about the CSS. Well, and by the way, this is exactly like the flow. So you start with bytes, which is like what computer shares, characters, token, nodes, DOM. All right, now you go to CSS transformation. So the browser does the same thing, but for the CSS. So again, the goal of the browser is saying, I want to create this high-level representation, this tree, out of this CSS that you provide me. And finally, the goal of the browser is to create this render tree. This is what the browser is going to use in order to print and put beautiful things in your screen. So that render tree, at the end of the day, is the combination of the DOM and the CSS DOM. So a good example of that, so maybe like the people that are like just on the back will not see this, but for example, this span is displaying none. So at the end of the day, the browser doesn't want to display that to the user. So you will see here that this span doesn't appear in the render tree. And the last part is all about painting. That's it. So for me, there are like 3 concepts when it comes to web performance. The first one is network request. How long does it take to get that HTML from the server? The second one is parsing. So I don't know anything about this HTML that you're giving me, but I will create that beautiful tree, and I will understand what's going on behind the scenes. And if, for example, if it's JavaScript, there will be some optimizations along the way. And then the third part is all about painting. It's all about rendering and displaying to the user. So one thing that I learned that surprised me a lot is that basically the part that is most time-consuming, is the parsing time. So it's basically that creation of the tree. That's why basically the size of your HTML or the size of your JavaScript has a direct impact on the parsing time and on the performance itself. So kind of my takeaway from that was something like shipping less code reduces the time for parsing, compiling, and basically executing the code. I'm not saying write less code so your colleagues will hate you because nobody understands what you're doing. What I'm saying is like, if you have 2 alternatives and you can reduce the number of lines of the code, it's perfectly fine. So just like think about it. For me, this was an eye-opening because when I was writing CSS, I mean, I care, but I wasn't aware of the impact of, all right, I'm writing CSS, boom, 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 boom. But at the end of the day, it has a direct impact on the performance. So now, let's change to 6 lessons that I learned that I would like to share with you. There are more, so this is just like 6 because we don't have much time. So let's get started. All right, so let's start with a disclaimer. As I said before, and it's like kind of like pointed out the same thing one over and over, is there's no silver bullet solution for web performance. And another thing was for me, don't do a premature optimization, find your real business needs. Because we are programmers, we are software engineers, where people like are starting their careers, people with more years in their careers, and we always tend to say, yeah, I want to create the most performance thing, or I want to make like everything super amazing. Something that I'm learning right now working at Eventbrite, and kind of my business unit is incubation, is research and development, but we are building a startup from scratch, is basically how to find a balance between shipping software but not like be a super perfectionist out of it. So it's hard, but I'm learning that. And I think like finding a balance and a strive for high quality of your software by delivering fast is important. Okay, so for me, something that is really awesome and I wouldn't expect from a technical talk is basically saying empathy with your users. For me, it's all about empathy. Honestly, before starting to research all this stuff, I was kind of like, well, I don't know even that people is using internet. But something that I realized is that not like we are engineers or business people, business that are in tech in a way, but there are many people out there that don't have the latest iPhone. There are people out there that has a really crappy Windows computer that is really slow. Or even worse, there are people out there that doesn't have a high-speed internet connection. And that's a reality, especially in the developing countries. And that's something that, to be honest, I didn't think before, but now for me it makes totally sense. So this is more kind of the reality that you will find out there. So for example, slow access to internet, expensive internet fares. That's why the size of your bundle matters. Also, cheap phones, computer, etc. So my takeaway, or kind of like my mental thought out of it, is basically code for everybody and have a team culture where basically testing in multiple devices and taking care of making sure that your code ships in multiple places is really important. For example, when I joined Eventbrite, I didn't necessarily have a lot of like background testing on Internet Explorer, or I didn't have a lot of background testing in multiple browsers. I was like, oh yeah, I have Chrome. I'm going to just run my code, and if everything looks fine, that's fine. But then I have Katie, which is our product manager, and also she cares about QA and all that stuff, and say, hey, Jorge, this is not working. This is not working in Internet Explorer. Or, hey, Jorge, this is not working in Firefox. And yeah, so for me, it was kind of like, all right. And honestly, it can be very frustrating, but once you take that into account, you started to even learn more about the CSS and the basics, because you will encounter problems about the way you write your code, the way you write your styles, the way you write the layouts. So it's a really good learning opportunity. And that's something that I always try to do in my day-to-day life. So the second one, don't overwork. And I'm not, this is not something like don't overwork in your real lives. I mean, when we are coding and when we are doing websites. So load when you really need. So this is a good example of my website. So this first screen has a lot of pictures, even though I optimized it after knowing that, yeah, it has an impact. So it has like, in the first screen, you have at least 3, 6, 9 pictures, bigger ones, and then you have 3 more, which is kind of like the avatar. So that's a lot of pictures at the beginning. And the problem before is that when you're in a mobile phone, and for example, you write an image tag, it will literally go scan all your HTML and download every single picture that you have there. So I started to research and say, all right, so how can I fix that? Because honestly, if you're in a mobile phone, this will shrink, and you will only see until this. So basically, you're loading these pictures, the ones below, for nothing, because the user is not even there. So, so I researched on that, and yeah, I mean, lazy loading, that term that everybody says. So this was the improvement. I got a 99 on desktop, and I got a 91 on mobile phone. And here you can see, here basically in the screen is in which point of the website you are, and what are the resources behind the scenes that are being downloaded. But as I said before with examples with Twitter, it's not only about images. It can be more things. So for example, in the case of Twitter, as I mentioned before, they don't download first this part. They don't download first that part. They are, in one side, they are saving network requests. And in the other side, they are basically liberating resources. So the browser is not busy painting other parts that are not needed at that time. Third, something that I recently discovered, it's all about the modern images formats. So traditionally, we have PNG, we had JPG. Sometimes it's hard for me to pronounce like words in English. So I discovered that basically, it's really impressive, but most of the times that I discovered that the website was taking longer is because I got like 1 megabyte, 2 megabyte pictures, especially with PNG pictures. And for me, that blows my mind. Because I wasn't care, like, yeah, I export this picture, everything looks great, I access to this website, and with my high internet speed connection, everything looks fine. But then I discovered that by reducing that, the first time that the user see, like the first render time, like the first rendering part that the user will be able to interact with the website was faster by reducing the image size. So yeah, some formats like GPEJ 2000, WebP, GPEGA, XR. But there is a problem, guys. Everything is not that cool. So as always, there is the problem with the cross-browsers compatibility. So in this case, for example, I found a way. The link, it doesn't show up, but basically, once you download the slides, you will see and you will access, and it's more in detail. But basically, they put a bunch of fallbacks. So first it's, all right, I want to load this WebP picture, then GPJ, and then this other one. So it's kind of like the way they specify the, all right, so if the browser doesn't support this or that, we will fall back. All right, who loves infinite list? Only me? Okay, thank you guys. So until last year, I wasn't aware of the issues with infinite lists. I thought, well, I mean, if I'm scrolling and if I get more resources from the backend, I will put it and I will just display them and everything will be fine. That's what an infinite scroller does. So there is a point where you go and say, all right, so this is kind of my threshold. I fetch more resources from the backend, I put it there, and then like once the user is more to that area, we'll see the resources. We'll see the content. But I started to work on like my first React project, which was the messages, a messages application. It was very simple, nothing like super cool. So you can just swipe right to discard a message. You can put favorite. If you go here, you will see all the list of favorites messages. Something that I really love is the dark mode. So now everything changed and everything looks blue, and I love dark modes. And then you can search and all that stuff. So cool. So far, so good. The thing with this project is that I made myself a requirement. Like I put the business guy hat, and I said, I want this to be able to scroll all the way down, and nothing will be broken. Because before of that, basically, when I implemented that first solution, like the naive infinite scroller, oh my God, like everything explodes. Because basically, when you have like a lot of nodes, like not 1,000, but 10,000 nodes or 50,000 nodes, everything is requiring resources from the CPU and requiring resources from the computer, and everything is starting to be really, really slow. And there was some times where basically my browser breaks, and I was like, huh. So basically, I come up with this solution, which is like I abstract the idea of this infinite card list, and at the end of the day, what I realized was in React Virtualize, which is a really nice library, really popular, supported with many companies like Airbnb and other folks, for doing like all this optimization when you are scrolling. And kind of the idea is basically making sure that even you are scrolling all the way down, they get some notes. So it's kind of like a game. So this is what the user sees. They put some notes. By notes, I mean like messages like, let's go back. Okay, so the idea is very simple. They say, okay, so I'm now displaying three messages for to the user, but what they are doing behind the scene is reserving some nodes on top of that and some nodes just below that. So basically, when the user goes up, it will reuse those free nodes on top of that and will display the right information. And when it goes down, it will do exactly the same. And that's the way, basically, anytime that you're getting or displaying one new message, it will not create a new node, because creating new nodes has a price in terms of like resources from the CPU and resources of the browser. So that's what they do. They put a set amount of nodes, and they are starting to reuse that. It's really interesting, and I also suggest you guys to take a look to the library and the way they implement things. Let's go. All right, so kind of my takeaway from that is that infinite lists are greedy, so be careful with them. So 5, simplify your code, write less. that may sound like simple or kind of like, all right, whatever, yeah, I would write less code, but it's true. So basically kind of my takeaway from that lesson was the less you write, the less code you write, the faster will be the parsing and the rendering. So the faster is going to finish the parse. The faster is going to finish the parser. And also, it's really important to remove unnecessary dependencies and code. So there are some tools out there, like you can run and basically understand, all right, so I'm not using this part of this other part. But like honestly, when I was like preparing this talk and I review like what I did with my website, I found like why I'm importing this library or why I'm doing this or that. And I realized, all right, I'm not using those resources anymore. It doesn't make sense to keep having like, to be part of the bundle, to occupy the space. And with this, like, you can do that exercise and you will be surprised. And also something that I learned that I wasn't aware before is basically when writing CSS, the more kind of nesting and different selectors that you write here, and this is of course kind of like a crazy example, just do for this, the worst. Because basically, what I told before about the way the browser creates the tree with the CSS, it will go deep, 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 deep. And you know, guys, like it's easier to find this, but then this and that, it takes more time. So, takeaway, the shorter your CSS selectors are, the faster the browser will apply the styles. All right. This point, also weird for a technical talk. Take a coffee with backend folks. So I like this meme because it's kind of like, yeah, scaling and just add Redis. So something that I learned in a personal project that I did. So the idea of daily focus was, this was like in my last year of the university, I did this project. So the idea was basically integrating third-party services like social networks like Facebook, Twitter, Gmail. Also creating new services on the go, for example, the Bitcoin service to read Bitcoin news, and integrate those in the same place and help people to be productive when dealing with information, when dealing with projects, and that was the idea. And it was really cool because, for example, I found a way to create new functionalities on top of Gmail, for example. So it's not in this screen, but all the email conversations that you have were converted into chats with the idea of like seeing faster the content and have more like a look and feel like let's reply quick. So the main challenge with Daily Focus is that creating this feed, which is first of all, is a querying to multiple third-party services, is a querying to Gmail, is a querying to Facebook, is a querying to the Bitcoin news, takes time and it's costly. So I couldn't basically say anytime that the user hits my website, I will recreate the feed. This is something like, this is exactly what Twitter does. Like they don't recreate all the time the timelines. They basically cache and create the timelines for a certain hours or for a certain days. And that's what how do they get that fast first reply? So I did the same for my project and it was really cool. So the takeaway from this is, when it comes to web performance, sometimes it's not only something that you should do in the front end. Sometimes takes you need to talk with backend people. Sometimes it's a problem that you need to solve with other folks. So it's just not only, hey, we are front-end engineers, we are here, we don't talk with anybody else, and we don't care. No, it's all about collaboration, it's all about teamwork, and it's all about knowing exactly how to tackle problems, no matter what they are. Okay, so let's do a quick recap. For me, those are like kind of my main takeaways from this talk, from what I said. So first one is measure, compare, take action. The second one is don't do prematurely, I don't know how to pronounce that, but don't optimize just because it's cool. Optimize because it makes sense for you and for your business. The third is less code is equals to better. If the code is readable and is okay. Anyway, and then 4 is be empathic with your customers, and for me that's really, really, really important to understand. Okay, so this is some kind of resources. So for example, like the 18-point web performance checklist by Adi Osmari. This guy talks a lot about that, so he's a really cool guy to follow on Twitter. And then like other resources. By the way, this course from Frontend Masters, I don't know if you know that that website, but it's really cool, really high quality shows, and they are not paying me for saying this. Okay, then in my website, if you go to ferreiro.me/go-performance, I wrote a blog post about this. So there are more stuff that I didn't cover today. So you can go there and check that. I'm talking, like image sprite, use SVG, a hack to load like asynchronously CSS and JavaScript. So if you want to take a look, just go there. And if you have some questions later on, you can write me on Twitter or by email, whatever. So the last kind of quote for this is, of course, like think, measure, compare, repeat, and always think about the business. So thank you very much.